All right, this is a big one case. What's your alma mater again? You went to school down in Florida, UCF.
UCF. Yeah.
Did you go to the spring game? Did you go to the spring game?
Yes, the spring game was a whole thing, but I had to go between the spring game at UCF. But when I first got into school, I was driving up to Tallahassee to go to the spring games at FSU because my brother was playing.
Oh, that's well, wow. Did not know that. That's awesome on your
Yeah.
brother playing at
So it was a
Florida
whole
State.
thing.
Look, I went to CNO basketball school, and that's kind of doing a disrespect to like actual basketball schools. I love my alma mater. I love Shaheen Holloway. I just wanted to see back just being a serious program. Every Saturday, I would sit around the TV with my friends at college, and we'd be watching college football, and we'd go, "Why did we not go to a college football school?" And ask you about the spring game because that's a fun part. See the team, it's excitement, it's accessibility, it's a free game for people that can't afford it. But Texas and USC have joined Nebraska and your brother's alma mater, Florida State, canceling their spring football games. So we saw this in an article of ESPN, and even Steve Sarkisian, he spoke about it on Up and Adams with Kay Adams. Here's Sark on why he's canceling the spring game for Texas.
Should I be making plans to come back since I'm a fan now, to the spring game? Is that
A spring practice. You want to come to spring
are we
practice?
not having a spring game?
No, we're not going to have a spring game.
Wow, breaking news. You're
Yeah.
the best coach, sir. And we're just
Well, I think a couple reasons why. Over the last 2 years, we've played 30 games.
yeah,
And that's
wear
a
and
lot
tear.
for college football. 14 2 years ago, 16 this year. And I just mentioned we've had 25 guys get invited to the NFL Combine the last 2 years. So we've got a lot of young players on our roster. We have 21 mid-year high school kids that just showed up. And so the development that's needed for these guys to get ready for the fall is a little bit different than it used to be. And so our approach is going to be a little bit more NFL driven, kind of more of an OTA style early on. And as we grow into more of the scrimmage formats in the second half of spring ball, that I just don't know rolling the ball out, playing the game when we only get 15 practices is the best for us to maximize the opportunities that we get. So it's going to be a little bit of different approach, but I think college football is changing right now.
Yeah.
And we need to do a great job as coaches of adapting to college football. And that's what we're trying to do. And I think it's going to be good for our team.
So Steve Sarkisian, head coach of Texas football, and he's right, Casey. They come off a run where they ended their season against A&M, played an SEC championship game, then played in college football playoff. So there is, as we were talking about to open, it's the same thing. From a player health perspective, and to Sark's point too, it's a player preparation standpoint. You have young guys, they only get like 15 actual full practices now in the springtime. That's valuable. So you eliminate a spring game, it goes that way. What do you think of that? Texas, these are power brokers in college football. And they're all saying spring game no more. And it's gotten out of their hands with more games, which we want. I wanted the 12-team college football playoff. I loved it. I wanted to go expansion. But now no spring games, which is such a rich tradition, especially for a place like Nebraska. Like that is it. That's all they got out there. So what do you think of this happening now in college sports?
Well, you mentioned a key thing off the top. It's the fact that like the spring game is one of the few games that anybody can go to. Anybody can get that college football experience and you can do it at an affordable manner. So that is kind of like that stings to lose that opportunity. But when it comes to kind of I don't know the theme of the day, protecting your players. You have to think of a number of things. I know some people are like, oh, spring game is where we see what the depth chart's going to look like for these rosters coming up. But no, that's training camp in the summer. Like spring is to see where the conditioning is on the guys, which means top to bottom, you're checking out everybody's conditioning. I could also say that like for my brother's team, FSU being one of the teams that are in the mix of this, like a lot of surgeries are taking place once they finally close out their season in December and January. So like the healing journey is supposed to be the point of emphasis then. And then you're gearing up and getting ready for this spring game. And the spring game is now turning into this whole circus of everything else. So kind of taking the affordability and the fan experience out of it, that timeline in which players can get healthy. Some players have to get crucial surgeries, and you have to think about the timeline of heading into training camp and trying to be healthy. I can understand why they want to do that, but you're talking about top programs who have been embedded in the tradition of spring games and adding all of the other fun elements to it. So from a fan perspective, it stinks. From a player protection, I love it.
Yeah, that's where it's just what's best. And like some interesting quotes, Matt Rule, when he spoke about it, he said it's really because last year they were on one of the more televised spring games, and he dealt with a lot of people offering his players NIL basically just from watching them on TV. Mike Norvell of Florida State said it's really because last year we were one of the more I mixed up a double. Oh, look at that! Look at my great note taking. Then a USC source. Let me go to that one. He said the biggest purpose was that a spring game actually serves now as a fan engagement tool, but we just think we can engage fans in a better way. So USC's looking money. Matt Rule is looking at it from the part of like, my guys were getting poached. And you like when serious teams like this that like fill out their stadiums make this type of decision, that's how you know it's a serious thing too. And yeah, it's like, what did I look up? I think I looked up Texas. Cheapest nosebleed seats, $200 a pop. Think about those little kids that love Texas football and this is their one shot for someone to afford to bring their family to a game. And it's gone now. That's what stinks. It's one of those, it makes sense. You hope there's a different way of fan engagement. You can still pack the stadium, kind of do a skills challenge thing, maybe a flag football thing. Don't televise it. Make it more of an engaging part with the fans beyond the game, which we'll see how that's how you challenge the marketing teams of these universities and these athletic departments. How do you make it engaging, you know? But that's when you see those quotes, guys getting poached, others saying that, you know, they just need to cancel it altogether. For business standpoints, it just kind of makes sense, which stinks. It's the new times. It's NIL, it's transfer portal, and it's the new times.
It's changing everything. And like, honestly, when you paint the picture that way, do a spring pep rally. I mean, if it's about the fans and if it's about tradition and it's about school spirit, like there's so much you could do with pep rallies these days. Do a spring pep rally and then of course do your fall pep rally. But now putting into perspective the NIL and the transfer portal has gotten a bit out of control. It helped because college football had to be stabilized after COVID. I mean, that was really stressful to watch those first 2 seasons coming out of COVID. But now it's just getting a little out of hand with the money involvement and everything. And then when you look at the poaching opportunities and the fact of how you can bait players into wanting to go to different teams, I mean, it's problematic. And I didn't think about the fact that the spring game can be the stage in which people are just sitting here looking in saying like, yeah, this is a player we can offer a sweet deal to or entice with NIL or entice with his ability to come into these schools. Because also look at how many players were jumping on the transfer portal and like didn't find that level of success or excitement or playing time that they were originally looking for because they didn't focus on the system that they decided to hop over to. They just saw the NIL and they kind of got blinded by it. So maybe taking the spring game off the table will kind of help stabilize some things and put this in perspective for players when it comes to the transfer portal and when it comes to the enticement of NIL.
Yeah, that's a big part of it all. It's like they're still struggling to find their stabilization, like you put it. And when you go from that standpoint, it's something that stinks to lose. In the grand scheme of things, it's not like the biggest loss. Because even, I finally looked it up. I corrected my notes here, Case, by the way. And sorry to our listeners. I'm just a rook here.
Talk to
Mike
me.
Mike Norvell's point, too, he's like, I'm putting a lot of info out there. It's a televised game. Guys pick it up. And he's also, again, with the state of the portal, you're teaching these guys something. You're implementing a playbook, and they could be gone. And to also the same thing, I'm not going to waste a day at a spring game if I'm not going to make it productive. Less practices means coaches have to be as efficient as possible and as opportunistic with every day they get with the players in the offseason because only have 15 practices to help protect the players.